joining us, Boston. This is your Retirement Revolution with financial advisor Rob Guy. He's the founder of Tax and Investment Advisors. I'm Spike Spangle. Rob, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great, Spike. How are you?
I'm very good, because you wanted to talk about a big, huge topic today, the wealth transfer of the baby boomer generation. There are estimates of $80 to $90 trillion that our hardworking, amazing baby boomers have amassed. But where is that money going to go, and how do we protect it? You mind diving into that today with us?
Yeah, I want to talk about this topic from the angle of losing everything at the end. So you may have the best financial plan that you've put together and you've done everything right. But what breaks my heart is to see people in the last few years of their life give up the vast majority, if not all, of their estate. So they might have planned on their children getting that, or their grandchildren, or a charity, whatever it might be. But due to an uninsured medical expense, those dollars end up going to the healthcare system.
Right. And we're going to be positive about this today. Please don't change the channel. We're going to talk about solutions. We're going to talk about strategies. We're going to talk about ways of protecting and ensuring your own wealth. So in this wealth transfer, though, making a lot of headlines right now. You can search this on the internet if you like. $80 to $90 trillion. But there's a couple of places this can go. It's not automatically going to go to the next generation. It could be lost in having to pay a lot in taxes. Yep. We've talked over the last several weeks about tax strategies. But it could also be paid out in a lot of healthcare costs, very much at the end, right? What are just some of the costs of long-term care facilities that you know here in Massachusetts?
Right. So Massachusetts does have one of the most expensive healthcare costs of anywhere in the country. It is not uncommon for a year in a long-term care facility to cost $120,000, $130,000 a year.
Wow.
That's pretty expensive. Yeah. Not a lot of people can afford that.
And when, you know, you can say numbers like $1 million or $2 million in saved investable assets, hardworking people right here in Massachusetts, you know, it took them 30 or 40 years to amass that.
Yeah.
But a $100,000 clip and another, and all of a sudden our life savings is dwindling very, very quickly, very much at the end.
Right.
So I know that we have insurance on our cars. Mm-hmm. I know we have insurance on our homes for a catastrophe. How can we insure the nest egg?
Great question. So I get questions all the time about how am I going to protect everything that I've basically saved up over my lifetime. And there's really only a couple of different things that you can do. But you really can do something. So you want to be proactive about this. You don't want to lose a lifetime's worth of savings in the last couple of years of life. And you potentially could leave your spouse, for example, in a tough situation if all the assets are used up, because, you know, the rules are very strict about who could get government assistance. So your choices really are to self-insure. You can pay out of pocket dollar for dollar if you end up having an illness that's not going to be covered by Medicare. And, you know, that's a lot of illnesses. Medicare really only pays if you're getting better. If you're not expected to get better, Medicare doesn't pay. So they'll pay the first 100 days, and then what you end up is a conversation with the social worker that says, what are you doing with mom or dad, because they need to get out of here, right? So you're either going to pay that out of pocket, you're going to qualify for mass health, which means you're essentially broke, or you're going to insure that risk. And, you know, we insure our lives, we insure our cars, we insure our income when we're working with disability insurance and so forth. But people forget to insure their nest egg. And I understand that nobody really wants to talk about this topic, right? Because it's not pleasant to talk about, but it's something that really needs to be discussed.
Right. And you know what? I think it's caring and I think it's empathetic to actually talk about it. And here's something I've discovered through some research. There are millions of Americans who are struggling with this concern and worry, whether it's for ourselves or for aging parents. It's right. What are we going to do? And you never have to start the conversation with anybody who's had a parent or grandparent go into it. We realize how high the costs are. So to possibly insure our own nest egg, I like it, but I remember old long-term care policies of 15 or 20 years ago. Are you talking about something like that or something different?
That's a great question. So many people, when they think of long-term care, or when they come into my office, we do an evaluation for them. We run one of those what-if scenarios where we say, what if there were a long-term care illness for one of you? What would that do to the estate plan? What would that do to the survivor? It's very devastating in many situations. So it comes up, oh, well, I've heard those insurance policies, though, they're really expensive, and I know someone who had one and it didn't pay, or it didn't work out the way they thought it was going to. Those are the old policies. The industry has changed quite a bit. They've gotten very creative in how they can now insure this risk. And let's be clear, if you have a good long-term care policy, it's not really meant to pay for the nursing home. That's the last resort. The good ones today will pay for home health care, assisted living. They'll pay to modify your home, widen the doors, build the ramps. They'll even pay to have somebody just come in and give your family a break, who maybe is already
maybe 3 days a week or
That's
certain
right.
hours of the day.
Yeah, and the reality is, if you're buying long-term care, or you're taking care of long-term care, you're not doing it for you. You're doing it for your family.
Yeah.
This is something you do for your loved ones.
We say that phrase all the time. I don't want to be a burden on my family.
Right.
So that's what we're helping define. And the burden can be financially, physically, emotionally.
Yeah.
You gave an example a few weeks ago on one of our programs. My father's like 6'2.5", 6'3". I certainly know that my mom wouldn't be able to lift him and take him upstairs.
Right.
I barely could. And would we want to be able to do that into our 50s or 60s or 70s?
Yeah.
So having these financial tools is part of the coverage of being able to retire free,
right?
Not having to worry about it. It's just one of the many tools. I mean, you're a financial advisor. You talk about tax reduction, the estate planning, but there isn't going to be any estate to leave over if we eat it all up with our long-term care costs.
Just one missing piece of the plan can really blow up the whole thing. You might have the best income plan, the best investment strategy, the best tax strategy, the best wills, trust, everything else in place. If you left out long-term care, you've really left yourself very much exposed.
Yeah, so we're going to continue to talk about positive solutions to make sure that you can insure your nest egg, even with those huge healthcare costs that can happen later in life. In fact, if you'd like to read about it, you can call the phone number. When you do, we'll send you a complimentary copy of Rob's book here, Retire Free. We'll talk about some healthcare solutions like long-term care coverage inside the book. You can earmark it, you can then highlight it, and then come on into the office. Let's get you started on your own retirement freedom roadmap. That's exactly what Rob Guy does. More of the retirement revolution right after this.
Well, I found myself in the finance industry all the way back in 1979. It was actually a conversation at the dinner table that I was having with my family. One of those dinners that everybody remembers, right? Mom and dad are there, brothers and sisters are there, everybody's having fun. We're all talking about our day. And then my mom asked my dad, how was your day today, Matt? My dad said, my day was wonderful. And he went on to tell my mom about his day. And see, my father was actually one of the first financial advisors back in the day when financial planning just first started getting going. He was telling the story at dinner that night that he had helped a gentleman with his financial planning, and that gentleman was so thankful, literally had tears in his eyes. He was a very hard-working guy, and my dad was able to show him the techniques and the strategies to allow him to have a confident and comfortable retirement. My dad's telling this story at the dinner table, and he actually starts tearing up telling the story, thinking about the gentleman that was tearing up, and then my mom starts tearing up, right? And I'm thinking, and I'm sitting there thinking, wow, this was very rewarding. My dad said, if you want to be happy in life, you can do well by doing good. That really resonated with me, and I decided right then and there I was going to become a financial advisor. I went to school, got a degree in finance, and immediately started in the industry right out of college at 24 years old.
Welcome back to the Retirement Revolution with financial advisor Rob Guy. I love the revolution because today's retirement is different. It's going to be different than it was for our parents and certainly our grandparents. And so we need a revolution of different tools and a different way to think about how we're going to cover our life savings. Rob, my dad even still makes the joke, I'm not worried about later on in life, I'll have you take care of me. I'm like, Dad, you're huge. I can't lift you and take you up the stairs and so forth. So not being a burden on our family
Yeah.
What kind of tools can we use? What's out there?
Well, it's actually really exciting that they've come out with some wonderful tools. We talked in the last segment about some of those older traditional long-term care policies where they really work kind of like a homeowner's policy or, a car insurance policy where you paid the premium for that year. You either used it or you didn't, and if you didn't use it, that money was gone forever, and you just renewed it for the next year or you didn't. And some of those policies were kind of restrictive on how they would pay and when they would pay. So they've kind of given them all a bad name. But I'm really excited about some of the solutions that we have now that really.
And when you're
can
saying
benefit
restrictive,
people.
I think it was that, it used to be, okay, it only pays maybe 3 years and it'll pay 2/3 or a certain amount of the expenses or something like that.
That's
and
right.
I think what was happening in the late 90s, the early 2000s is people would come to events and go, hey, I just got my statement. They look like they want to double
Right.
my monthly payment on it, or they want to cut my coverage in half. And was that why did that happen?
Yeah, that was happening. People were getting letters from their long-term care companies saying, you've been paying this premium for 8 years, and now we need to double your premium or cut your benefit in half. That's because the industry just had no idea how to price the product when it first came out. They had no idea that so many people were actually going to file claims. And, yes, it's expensive to replace a car, but a long-term care expense is significantly greater. So the insurance companies were losing a lot of money on them. So if you think about those old policies, I don't even recommend those anymore. We don't use those traditional long-term care policies anymore. We use what are called hybrid policies, which are really exciting. What a hybrid policy is life insurance companies are the ones who offer long-term care. They didn't really know how to do long-term care, but you know what they do know how to do? Life insurance. So what they did was they built a long-term care feature into life insurance policy. So let me give you an example of a client we helped. This gentleman had a lot of money built up in his savings that he didn't really feel like he was going to necessarily need all of it. And one of the things that we were able to do was show him how to reposition a portion of that money into a long-term care policy that was based on a life insurance policy. Why does that matter? Well, this gentleman was either going to use the long-term care, and in which case what you're allowed, say you have a $500,000 or $1 million life insurance policy with a long-term care benefit. What that actually means is you could tap into that life insurance death benefit while you're alive. If your doctor says you need help with the activities that you need to do, then the policy will actually start paying you the death benefit while you're alive to pay for long-term care. So traditionally you had to die in order for the benefit of long-term care to work out, but these days, these hybrid policies, you're going to pay money into this contract, and you're either going to use it, or if you're not going to use it, your family's going to get a big lump sum tax-free of all that money. So it's not like the old policies where you use it or lose it. These policies, you're either going to get the benefit or your family's going to get the benefit. And you might be able to pay for your long-term care expenses for pennies on the dollar. This gentleman was an engineer. He ran all the numbers, and he said, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. Why would I pay dollar for dollar for long-term care if I could get it for 20 cents on the dollar? And he was very concerned with leaving his wife in a terrible situation if he ended up needing long-term care and blowing through all their savings, and then she was going to be left with nothing.
This is almost sounds too good to be true. So I want to be clear, and I'm not trying to throw you an easy, underhanded softball, but it really doesn't sound like there's a lot of downsides. I mean, there's a cost to it, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to put, I'm guessing, a few $100,000 or more into something like this, but your family gets it for life insurance if you never use it.
Yeah.
Some of them have properties where you could turn on income if you need it much later in life, like your 80s and 90s, or if you have the need for the long-term care, it can double or triple what your monthly payments could be to help insure and not have to take it directly from your nest egg. Am I getting my head around that right?
You are, and part of the analysis that we run for people shows them how much money they're potentially going to have at the end of their life. And for a lot of people, that's more than they actually knew they were going to have or ever imagined they were going to have. And they realized they could without affecting their lifestyle, reposition some of their assets into this long-term care policy. They were still going to be able to live their life, do everything they wanted, still have a nice nest egg left at the end. But God forbid anything happened, they were going to be able to take care of themselves and their family without putting a burden on anybody. And nobody's losing money. Yes, you're making an investment in the contract, but either you're going to get it back because you need the long-term care, or your family's going to get a tax-free windfall, which is going to be many times more than the dollars you put in.
And possibly double or tripling if you do go into long-term care, and protecting the rest of the assets for possibly your spouse.
Exactly.
Or, as you said, for the life benefit if it's your kids.
Sure.
Amazing different coverages for everybody there.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of, because you said, I think it was on page 14, you said, I want to remind people, because you are a wealth advisor, you help people with tax strategies, even the estate planning and all of that. But you had said on page 14 of your book here, just one element of not having the health coverage could blow the whole rest of the plan that you've put together for 20 or 30 years.
That's right. You could have the perfect plan, but if you've left out long-term care, you have a gaping hole in your plan.
All right. We've discussed also at the beginning here the great wealth transfer, $80 to $90 trillion, and this is in part what we're trying to help you protect. We don't want you to have to spend this all on health costs, very large health costs as we get into later life. We want to make sure that you've got the proper kind of coverage. And if you do, there's a very wonderful place where hopefully a lot of this wealth transfer is going to go. And by the way, it's not the kids and the grandkids, or hopefully not the IRS. We're going to talk about that when we get back. So for you right now, I want you to get started on your own retirement freedom roadmap. That's a conversation with Rob Guy. You're going to come on into the office, or we could do it over the phone or over Zoom if you prefer. But you dial that phone number. There are people standing by right now, and they'll schedule an appointment for you. Leave your checkbook at home. You don't need a credit card or anything like that. It is a conversation. What do you want your retirement to look like? What are you most worried about? So dial that phone number right now. And when you do, I'll send you a complimentary copy of the book here, Retire Free, and his 5 steps of retiring free. Read it, earmark it up, bring it into the office and say, I want to ask you about this, Rob. More of the retirement revolution right after this.
As Americans, we strive for better. From a better house to a better career to a better life for our kids. Better has become the American way. But when it comes to your retirement, what does better mean to you? More income, a more flexible lifestyle, better financial solutions? A better retirement always begins with a plan. To get your complimentary written income plan, call the number you see here. You only retire once. This is your opportunity to plan for better.
Welcome back to the Retirement Revolution with financial advisor Rob Guy. Part of this revolution right now is, we've said, there's estimated somewhere between $80 to $90 trillion that will transfer from this hardworking baby boomer generation. Hopefully they're going to live long, wonderful retirements, but eventually what they've amassed is going to go somewhere. Right. We're trying to avoid it going to healthcare costs, and then also having to go out to just, regular things like taxes, going down to D.C. or here in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Where is all of this money going to go, though, if you plan for it properly, Rob?
Well, ideally, it's going to go to your spouse. And, who lives longer? Men or women?
Yeah. I think the actuary tables are somewhere right now at least 6.5 to 7 years. But I mean, both of my grandmothers lived a good 10 years beyond both of my grandfathers.
Right. This really is a woman's issue when I think about it at the most basic level, because that's really oftentimes the person who's going to bear the burden if you're not prepared, if you haven't taken care of this. Guys, don't change the channel. I know nobody wants to talk about this, but the reality is, if you haven't planned for long-term care, you could be putting your wife in a very difficult situation. And, I have people come into my office and say, yeah, I have long-term care. It's sitting right here, my wife. It's like, first of all, you don't want to put that burden on her. I ran into a couple not that long ago where the husband was suffering from a degenerative disease, and he was getting worse and worse, and the wife was taking care of him. And they ended up in a situation where the wife ended up in a rehab for 9 months because she literally broke her back taking care of her husband. And so, if you think your wife can pick you up off the bathroom floor, put you on the toilet, put you in bed, do all those different types of things, great. But most people can't do that. And, if you end up utilizing all your family assets to take care of your long-term care needs because it's something that hadn't been planned for, well, you're now potentially leaving your wife in a terrible situation. If you end up on Mass Health, for example, people say, oh, I'll plan for Medicaid, which is Mass Health in Massachusetts. You're only allowed to keep about $100,000 in assets total as a couple before you qualify for that benefit. If you're single, you're only allowed to keep about $2,000. And that's when Mass Health would kick in. So people think the government's going to pay for it. They're not. They're not going to pay for it unless you're indigent. And if you leave your spouse with no assets and no way to take care of herself, that's a difficult situation. One other thing I want to address. Everybody says, I'm not going to a nursing home. Well, nobody in a nursing home actually made an appointment to be there 3, 5, 7 years ago. But also, these new plans that we have today, they're a keep you out of the nursing home plan. If you have the resources and the assets to be able to pay for that long-term care at home, isn't that ideal? Wouldn't you rather have the bed brought in, the doors widened, the ramp put in, the care to come in to support your spouse, maybe if she's helping to take care of you or other family members? You're not really doing this necessarily for you. You're doing it for your loved ones. And, I don't want to leave my wife in a position where she's either going to have to take care of me or, what ends up happening? If they can't, guess where you do end up? In the nursing home, because the family actually can only do so much. At some point, they're not going to be able to take care of you. If you don't have the resources to take care of that, that's how you might end up in a nursing home. We call it a keep you out of the nursing home policy.
Yeah.
And whether it's a life insurance plan or certain types of annuities these days, people have lifetime income benefits on annuities where if they need long-term care, they'll actually double the benefit. So maybe you have $10,000 a month coming in for life on your annuity and suddenly you need long-term care, that'll double to $20,000 a month. That might be the difference between you ending up in a nursing home, leaving your spouse impoverished, or being able to do the right thing.
All right. And let's end here on a positive note as we're talking about the estate planning and why this is such a large women's issue. We know even just through actuary tables, women outlive us by several years. We want to make sure they've got the protection and the coverage. If I have to go into a long-term care, I don't want to eat up a lot of our life savings. Yep. On the other hand, other reports, since women are going to be living so much longer, they say within 5 years, women are going to own 50.5% of the wealth here in the United States.
Yep.
I'm kind of interested to see, will elder women invest differently, spend differently? They're living much, much longer. I mean, what is the landscape of spending going to look like? How is it going to change? Are you interested to see what's going to happen as this transfer of wealth moves over to the spouses in the next few years?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I want to make sure that I'm going to leave my spouse with some wealth, right? But also, if I'm not here, I want to make sure my wife has the resources to be able to take care of herself. Because you know what happens? Like you said, they outlive the men many times. When I pass away, my wife's going to get all the money. Right? So the wealth is going to be transferred now to, many times, the women who are outliving the men. They are potentially going to spend that money in a different way, invest that money in a different way. They have different priorities oftentimes. And a lot of times they're much more concerned about beneficiaries, leaving money to children, to grandchildren, to charities, to things like that. So I do think we're going to see a couple of different changes. One, a little bit more conservative investing because they tend to not want to take as much risk. I think we're going to see more planning for beneficiaries. Oftentimes the men will say, my kids are fine. I put them through school. They don't need anything. And the wife on the side will say, I want to take care of my grandkids, and they generally tend to have more charitable inclinations. So part of the big, one of the big components of the estate plans we put together or people, if you do have charitable intentions, you can do some tremendous tax planning with those dollars and really benefit yourself and benefit the charities. So I think we're going to see some more of that as well.
Something I learned from you was a lot of women who do like to be charitable, they might want to take it directly from their own accounts.
Yeah.
But you said there's ways to actually set it up where it goes directly to the charity,
Yeah.
and it ends up being a tax benefit for
Right.
them.
Yeah. Yeah. So as long as you're age 70 and a half, you can actually take money out of your retirement account, your IRA, 401k, and have it sent directly to a charity. It's called a qualified charitable distribution. Even if your required distributions don't begin until you're 73 or 75, as long as you're 70 and a half, you can take that money and have it paid directly to a charity of your choice. That will not be taxable to you, and it will not be taxable to the charity. And if you are of required minimum distribution age, say you're 75 and 76, you were going to give $10,000 a year to the church or the wildlife or whatever anyway, well, have the money taken from your retirement account, sent tax-free directly to the beneficiary, charitable beneficiary of your choice, and that will satisfy the IRS's required minimum distribution. You won't pay any tax on that distribution, and the receiving institution won't pay any tax either. That's a great thing.
Yeah, that's a great thing. A very last question, barely a minute left here, though. We do talk a lot about couples, but we also want to address solo retirement.
Yeah.
Sometimes we go into retirement solo either by choice, sometimes through divorce, or because our spouse passed away. Do you feel
Right.
it's just as important to continue or to have a retirement plan if we are solo in retirement?
Well, even more important, right? Now the burden is really 100% on you. And all the decisions that need to be made, you're going to have to make yourself. You don't really have somebody to bounce that off of. I have a lot of solo people as clients of mine because many times they are finding themselves in a situation where they're not quite sure what to do because maybe somebody else made a lot of those decisions through the years. And now they have a need for a plan, but they're not quite sure what to do. So they come and they get a second opinion. It's really what we do is provide second opinions to people. We say, based on your situation, what you're trying to accomplish, where you stand today, this is what I feel would be the best course of action for you.
Rob Guy, I really appreciate you having the difficult conversation today. I know it's not one that everybody wants to have, but in the most positive way, we are living longer than we ever have before. You've built a nest egg, and now we're trying to make sure that you insure it for yourself, for your spouse, and possibly for the next generation. Let's make sure you've got tools in place that can help you insure your own retirement nest egg. It starts with your own no-cost retirement freedom roadmap. Call the phone number. Thank you for watching.